Your Excellencies, High Commissioners and Ambassadors, Your Excellencies, leaders of various political parties, I have taken note of the presence of the Secretary General of the United Party for National Development, Mr. Batuke Menda, the Secretary to the Cabinet, and other senior government officials. Ladies and gentlemen, for a government that promotes inclusive policy dialogue on national matters, the Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference 2025 is a critical platform for national engagement. I take this opportunity to commend Transparency International Zambia and partners for organizing this invaluable forum. The vision, as articulated by the head of state, President Hakainde Hichilema, is a Zambia that is grounded in integrity, transparency, and the equitable use of national resources, especially a zero tolerance to corruption. The interventions government has put in place demonstrate that condemnation of corruption is more than rhetorical. The President has consistently shown unwavering leadership and a clear commitment to transparency, accountability, and a culture of integrity. I have been requested to call upon the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, to deliver a keynote address at this year's Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference. I am honored, Mr. President, and take note of his leadership in strengthening our institutions, implementing anti-corruption reforms, and ensuring accountability has been critical to our national development and the public's trust in governance. This principled leadership will continue to inspire and drive the national conversations like the one we are attending today. This, we are sure, is going to be clear through his keynote address, reminding everyone that the countering past, current, and future corruption is a collective patriotic duty which the President is leading. Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the President's leadership in championing the fight against corruption is critical. We assure you that his keynote address will set a crucial tone of commitment to this cause for the nation and all partners. Mr. President, we look forward to your presence and to the powerful message your keynote will deliver, underscoring our collective resolve to combat corruption for a better Zambia. Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the President's address today will set the tone for the discussions on anti-corruption, transparency, and accountability. This will be our collective commitment to a Zambia free of corruption. I take this opportunity to pay special gratitude to our partners who have been supporting government through the Ministry of Justice as a policyholder to our oversight and anti-corruption bodies in various forms. Your efforts are bearing results. Indeed, our institutions have arisen to this challenge. Honorable Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my rare honor to formally invite the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, to deliver the keynote address at this pivotal conference. Mr. President, sir.
Thank you very much, Minister of Home Affairs. Acting Justice Minister. May we take our seats, please? May we please take our seats? Thank you very much. Let me acknowledge in an abridged way those that are present today, starting with the Anti-Corruption Commission and those associated with the Commission, Chair, Board, leadership, management, so to say, staff. Let me also acknowledge the Transparency International, all the structures, chapter chair, and indeed for those that run Transparency International in our country. I want to acknowledge the Minister, as I said already, other ministers that are here. Let me acknowledge our colleagues, partners, those that are seated at the table with me, with us, in no particular order, the EU, the British, the Swedes, and obviously the Chandler Foundation. I think it's important that we appreciate your presence and all that you do with us in the country. I want to acknowledge, I don't know if the mayor is here, Mayor of Lusaka and her local government colleagues. Obviously, central government is important through the Secretary of Cabinet and through you, all of those structures. I do acknowledge our UN friends, partners. Thank you for your message. And also, obviously, the members of the diplomatic corps that are here from not just the EU bloc, but others that may be present here. So it is important to acknowledge the political parties since we are talking about elections next year. Through our constitutional democracy, elections here are anchored largely, not only, but largely on political parties, because those are the vehicles through which we take or assume public office. Yes, they are independent candidates, but largely it's through political parties. So to recognize leaders of political parties that are here, I haven't forgotten the Electoral Commission, because it's very important that we do understand the centrality of the Electoral Commission in managing elections, of course, together with all of us as stakeholders, and they manage elections on our behalf. I also want to acknowledge those other dignitaries that I may have not referred to here in the interest of time. If I may say simply, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to acknowledge the media as well, because many times we ignore them. Then when our stories are not carried to our level of satisfaction, we complain. So we want to acknowledge the media for your unwavering support to carry the messages that come out of a conference like this one, the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference. So may I also acknowledge what has been delivered already by my colleagues, ably, including the colleagues that delivered from the floor, and you have all brought out very important stuff in line with the theme, which is really collaborating in actions. And I do extract the importance of the connotation of collaboration here. So thank you for your messages. But let me also indicate that I'm very pleased to be officiating this 6th Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference here. I'm reminded that I'm the first, sitting head of state, but we do it with pleasure. I think we should have been here earlier. We are 4 years in government now. I would have loved to have been here earlier so that we could have tracked some of the things that we would have discussed then, and then the progress made so far. I'm glad that the Swedish ambassador, you've tried to track some of the things that this government and together with all the partners are doing in order to address some of the issues around corruption, transparency, and indeed serving the people of Zambia diligently. And obviously, as I will try and show today, that there's a relationship, not just a single line relationship, but a duality, if you like, in causal effect relationship that I see in these issues. And sometimes they can be seen from one angle. You just have to look carefully. You see that one affects another, sometimes forward and backwards. So we'll see if we can try and isolate these items. But we're very happy to be here through your invitation. And also, I did say to Mr. Lifuka, I followed yesterday through briefly the news of the exercise or the engagement with the younger people. And I will say something here about the importance of early engagement in communities, in families, to the subject that we're discussing today. So, let me congratulate the Transparency International Zambia once more on your 25 years of advocacy. It's very, very important that some institutions are dedicated to advancing certain aspects of what the whole society needs to be alive to or aware of, or indeed take account of those spaces when we do our work. So it's not that you are not appreciated maybe all the time, but today we want to express our appreciation for the work that you do over these many years. May we clap for them for the work that they do. Thank you very much. Transparency International Zambia is also part of the global Transparency International, so we need to appreciate that link or linkage. And I know that Transparency International Zambia draws on the network, the skills, the network of Transparency International globally. So we appreciate, I don't want to say the motherboard, but really, if you like, the frame, the framework under which Transparency International somewhat draw some value from Transparency International Global. So thank you very much. It is important to underscore not once, but many times over and over, to underscore the importance or the fact that corruption undermines development, that corruption basically takes away the trust that society, communities must repose in governments, in institutions, in what we do. Corruption takes to subtract from the benefits or achievements of development and the trust that the public, if you like, confer to those in public office, I must say, coming from the private sector, to the private sector as well, because there's a perception that corruption sits only in the public sector. I'm here to tell you for my sins of the past that corruption sits in the private sector as well. As you know, the two normally usually collaborate, the public sector and the private sector. If you talk of corruption around contracts, issuance of contracts, issuance of business opportunity, it does happen between the public and the private sector. So it is not quite the correct way to assume that corruption only lives in the public sector. It does live in the private sector, because you see when you prosecute, for example, or when you engage in other activities, which I will talk about shortly, you can draw the line of collaboration. But somewhat the private sector has tended to, to escape from, if you like, the heat around corruption. I think this is one area we must pay attention to. It takes two to tango. Absolutely. But it's something that is not even talked about openly. And this must change going forward. So, but I was talking about the negative effect corruption has in the development process. And we must all work together. I must say at this early stage, in line with the theme, collaborate, work together to address these issues, these issues around corruption. I must also tell you that in the political sphere, it is generally assumed that if a government, a political party in office tackles corruption, you are tinkering on the edge of losing popularity. I want to share this with you because I hear it over and over. And my argument is that if we fight corruption and we support development, I do believe these things will net off along the way, rather than fearing to tackle corruption because of the fear of losing political popularity or support, especially that you are talking of the elections coming. I think it's important, again, for us to look at this unspoken issue and why sometimes even the opposition will advance policies that basically will be less aggressive towards corruption in order to be seen by the electorate that they will not take away economic business opportunities from the voters when they are in public office. I hope you can understand that line I'm tagging at the moment. So I think as a community, as a country, as an economy, as partners, we must all abhor corruption. That includes the office, the party in office, and the parties seeking public office. This must be a common area, or if you like, point of convergence. And I think we must check it in our institutions as the political parties. I heard you, Ambassador from Sweden, over the Lady Piri case. I heard you very carefully. And I think there are things that we need to do there around that story as an example of what happens to a young lady that hasn't gone far in school but seeks public office as an able member of the community to serve the public. So yes, there's those rigidities. But in her case, I want to add to your story, it would have been also the fact that she may not even be grade 12. We have legislated that only grade 12s can aspire for local council and parliamentary representation. So those are some of the issues that we should also be aware of. Maybe a well-intended minimum qualification requirement would actually leave out Lady Piri to seek public office by legislation, because that's what Zambians wanted in their wisdom. Let me return to what I want to cover today, but I'm veering off a little bit to make a point. So now, I must confirm that this government was elected on the platform of economic growth, social development, to drive economic and social development, to also, if you like, front prudence in running the affairs of this country. That includes fighting corruption. I want to say it again and again. It is that we advance the voters that this government will work on turning around the economy and injecting prudence in the way we manage public resources, public affairs, public resources, and abhorring corruption. Clear. Corruption of yesterday, the past, if you like, corruption of today, irrespective of who is involved, corruption of tomorrow. And I think it's important that we understand as a community, as collaborators, call ourselves anything, that such trust from a political party which eventually wins elections and takes office and drives economic reforms. And in driving economic reforms, you have to address the issues of corruption. Otherwise, it will only be what you may call symbolism. But in doing that, I want to confess here that in doing that, you injure even your voters because of habits that citizens got used to, something maybe the Europeans here may not understand, but maybe by now you understand that citizens also get used to handouts. When you dry them out of handouts, they complain. When you basically say you cannot do tantamen, you must work hard, a guy like me get ridiculed because he's a Kachema, he thinks all of us need to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. No, I'm talking about other aspects that should accompany the economic reconstruction, prudence issues, in the utilization of public resources, in everything that we do. Cutting expenditure, frivolous expenditure, necessary expenditure, driving the country away from consumption expenditure mentality to investment expenditure mentality. I must say it's been a difficult road to walk because generally citizens got used to other ways of doing things, and then they quickly connect that to mean maybe you're a little bit harsh, you're a little bit unfair to them. So there's a little bit of education required. Even when you appoint somebody into a job, they think that they will do what the previous occupant of that position was doing in the previous government and front personal interest ahead of national interest. Therein lies some challenges. But I want to confirm that this government is undeterred about those feelings. We believe in the sum total of things over time. Zambians will see development, the economy rebounding. It's already happening, but there's still a debate. In a year or two or so, there will be no debate. Everything will be clear. But there's a rebound coming through out of this different approach to managing public affairs, including the fight against corruption. And one of the things that we've been confronting in this area is to also legislate so that we can cut out the old ills, the reasons that led us to acquiring a debt mountain a few years after cleaning our national balance sheet. At the time of President Mwanawasa, may so rest in peace, and into 2011, we had basically wiped out to a minimal level our debt obligations. And people like me thought we would not return to those days ever again. I was wrong. Within a short time, debt returned with vengeance, bigger quantums. Now, so when you then address that issue of different habits, you need to do it consistently. I'm sharing this at this platform deliberately, so that we can also get the support of the Anti-Corruption Commission, which we have, I do believe. We can get the support of the Transparency International Zambia and the Global Transparency International, plus our partners, yourselves, that it is important to be consistent on this issue. And even those that seek public office, that get jobs, appointments in certain roles, not to aspire to behave like those before them in those roles, because therein lies an expectations crisis. And I think it's important that we as a community accept that we need to change our ways, the way we do things, separating public assets from private assets. Even when we occupy positions of privilege that could allow us to access public resources and along the way convert them to private resources. The fight against corruption has nothing to do with one who belongs to a particular party or against one who belongs to anything else or any persuasion, political party, religion, where you were born, it does not matter. Where we sit as this government, that does not matter. And it must not be confused, because I've heard people say the fight against corruption is not selective. It's not. It's not targeting anybody. And I think it's important that Transparency International, for example, do work with us. Our UN system partners do work with us to reinforce that position. If there's departure in conduct, simply alert us that from what you're saying there's a departure, there's a corruption or abuse of offices in that corner by this institution or this person in the government now. Instead of saying it on social media and create suspicions and really loss of trust unnecessarily, just come forward. And I think ACC, you have created those windows for people to confidentially bring information. Is that right? That is important. This conference must take those issues important. And Transparency International may be the collaboration between not just the ACC, DEC, drug enforcement, police, let me call them oversight institution, financial intelligence center, any other. Let's deepen our cooperation in a practical way, including our partners, donors, including Chandler, for example. What is it that we could do to open doors to allow citizens to report in a manner that they are not exposed and they are not, if you like, harassed, so to say, for lack of a better word? I would like to see out of this conference such issues to come through of a practical nature, that we can collaborate in that way and we can transmit or facilitate reporting negative behavior of this nature to fight that which we know reduces the developmental ticket, erodes the trust. I hope I'm talking to somebody here or some institutions. Let's strengthen that. If it's there, I would like to see more strengthening of it. And I think Zambians would like to see more of that. It's part of the theme to collaborate in a meaningful way and not to share social media stories and then to demand government action based on social media stories which are not verified. They actually create a problem in their own right, such stories, and then we run with it, and we have press conferences about those stories. Let's not do that. Let's first work in the true sense of collaboration together at the operational level, at policy level, and legislative process as well, at all levels. I think it will be very important, as far as I'm concerned, to be able to advance what we've been doing. I can argue you have a government here that is acting differently. This is why we legislated, for example, the cooperating partners may not be aware. Shortly after taking office, we legislated, we went to Parliament to control the executive's ability to borrow without parliamentary oversight. That law was not there. I heard amongst yourselves articulating, no, you appreciate what government has done here. That includes this government cutting its own excesses as a government, not based on what we've done already, but based on government. Because when you are the new government, you are responsible for the wrongs that were done by others, such as the debt accumulation, and you have to do a debt restructuring, such as now controlling those excesses through legislating for Parliament to have oversight over debt acquisition. I hope we're together here. Yeah? Very important. Very important. So that legislation we put in place means that this government is checking itself and governments of the future, unless they remove that legislation. And I think that's important going forward. Let me also indicate other actions that this government has since put in place since 2021. Some of them you've touched on. I've just touched on legislation to curtail excesses, any kind of excesses. I've only used one example of debt acquisition, but any other excesses. I think we should use the legislative capabilities to control ourselves. Human behavior, greed. I listened, Chairman of that Corruption Commission, when you were speaking, people making donations, and donations are viewed to be okay without assessing the sources of income for those for them to donate. I think that area is an area we must work on as well. But I must also tell you that it is important that even recipients of donations take responsibility to say who is donating. Are they armed robbers? Are they people who have no income, traceable income? How is it that they're donating these amounts and we, the recipients, are happy to receive? Because along the way we receive stolen property. So I want to share what you say. Along the way, I think the recipients, the donors must be checked. The recipients must also ask questions. How come this fellow who has no business, no income, no track record, is able to donate so much amount of money? Yes, for political reasons, but even for other reasons. Sometimes they may be donating to wash the money, to clean the money. I think I want to see, society working from both ends. How we do it, you are the experts in this room and outside this room. Anyway, let me return to other measures. I know my colleagues have touched on them. Just to remind ourselves that this government, after seeing that there are many things that were not working well and the slowdown in prosecuting corruption, we decided to establish the Economic and Financial Crimes Court. Ambassador Sweden, that's where the progress has come from. The Economic and Financial Crimes Court. The ordinary court would take 10 years. I must be honest with you, 20 years. We have a case in point which started under the late President Mwanawasa. It was only concluded under our government. It started under the late President Mwanawasa and only concluded under this UPND government, I believe in 2022 or thereabout. Two things. One, justice denied, justice delayed. Justice denied. But more important, the finer point is that what effect has this got to do with a deterrence on corruption? What do I mean? If citizens believe that they can conduct themselves badly, and if they are unfortunate they are caught, the prosecution will take 20 years. What does that mean to them? They will probably say, fine, in 20 years I'll find a way out. Let me take the risk now and do something wrong. And if I steal a lot, I like to use the example of $10 million, I will pay legal fees of, say, $2 million. I'll hire the best lawyers. You get them. I may be acquitted. If I'm convicted after 20 years, I will have used $8 million to enterprise. And then, when I'm caught, when I'm convicted, I'm touching on something else, maybe the third factor. I will only be in there for 4 years, maximum, or less, even a few months. Because the way sentences are couched, are defined, this is a new point I'm bringing, is that up to 4 years, up to 5 years. And then you have remission. And a guy will save, after having stolen $10 million, and long prosecution, he can invest the money and make more money than the 10 minus 2 is 8 in $8 million. And they may only be there for a year or so because the judge, Judge Hamaundo, decides to say the sentence, the penalty for such a crime is up to 4 years in prison. Up to 4 years. So they may give even 1 month for a fellow who took $10 million as opposed to one who stole my cow, and the one who stole my cow will go in for 14 years. So there's a disproportionate issue there, even on the sentence. I've touched on prosecution, length of prosecution. I've touched on the way we've been carrying these things as normal. I think we must dig into those issues at a conference like this if we really want Ambassador Sweden to bring about practical improvements to what is going on in the fight against corruption. I hope I have not confused people here. But the point I'm making is that we should look deeper into these things. The idea, one of the concluding remarks was that let's see almost zero presence of corruption. But we have to touch on a lot of things in here that need to be done. And they're not difficult. But what we need is to have a shared vision that we will fight corruption in a meaningful way. And on a light note, a 20-year case came from President Mwanawasa's time, and the people who were, when they were taken to court, they may have been 50 years old. After 20 years, how old were they? 70 years. And immediately the final convictions came. Relatives and friends and all of a sudden, no, you need to pardon these guys. They're too old. They can't be in prison. You need to pardon. And the pressure mounted and piled. And eventually you do it. There is a flaw in the whole process. So the Economic and Financial Crimes Court we introduced was to address some of the concerns around a dedicated court, to also to create a scaremonger aspect, that you still, your matter will be prosecuted within 5 months. And that's why you started seeing the progress you complained about in Livingstone. There was a structural problem inherent in the system. And people knew that you can abuse the system for 20 years. So I would like those changes that the government has taken to be taken note of, and for the community to support those changes. So justice delayed is justice denied. Now justice is being dispensed timely. Personally, I'm not even happy with that, because some cases are so simple. With the evidential information, you can prosecute much quicker. But at least you say up to 5 months. That debate in Parliament took a long time. And we lost a year or two. Speed in which we do things is another message I'm giving. We've reviewed the Anti-Corruption Act to deal with the penalties also. I've already touched on the penalties. There are loopholes in many areas. So my appeal to Transparency International, to our colleagues working in the ACC, that Director General knows one of the conversations we had, that insider trading takes place, where people in the system know how to help others to escape. That's not a joke. So I'm here talking openly. So we need to work together to take out institutional loopholes, and which are applied selectively, a friend of a friend. I believe this is about humanity. Human beings act like that. But as much as possible, we should try and tighten issues of loopholes in the system. But we must also support these institutions. On their own, they may be willing, but they may not have the skill sets inside the institutions. That's what we have picked up. What do I mean? If you want to prosecute some theft which is of accounting nature, you need accounting skills to be availed. And that's why you are seeing now, like SAMSA, we had to bring a forensic audit. A normal investigation by DEC, DEC, by ACC, they may not pick the trail. So, and the forensic audit has allowed us now to pick the trail because the forensic auditors understand the financial flows. I'm talking of what we have done now to allow not just the Auditor General, but even external auditors who have forensic auditing capability. And now we are prosecuting. It took time, partners, to get to that level. And that's also important for partners to understand the processes that will lead you to a level where you want to be. And I know a lot of complaints were raised, genuinely so, by partners. Why is it taking long? The forensic audit for my sins of the past requires a methodical, meticulous work to connect the dots and the financial transactions and flows, and to vouch and verify those. I'm talking about skill sets, collaboration. The ACC, in our view now, is cooperating more with the Auditor General than before. DEC is cooperating with the Auditor General than before. When we see that the Auditor General has no skills, we go out and buy skills in the market held by firms that are capable. You will see more of that going forward. And that will give us a stronger basis even when we prosecute. I believe you will see a few more convictions in the Zamsa area because of the work of the forensic auditors, which then the prosecution can utilize. Fine points, but very important. Because if you just, I also say to my colleagues, as the government were saying, do not arrest people before you do an investigation. Those are changes we've made. Because once you've done your investigation, then only you arrest. Obviously, give police bond when it's applicable. If not, court, bail is applicable, give bail. Punishment should not be meted through detentions for longer periods. These are changes you are not paying attention to, which were not the case applying at a certain time. I'm one of the victims of being detained on a Thursday or Friday every now and then, so that I can be kept in there until Monday or Tuesday. We should not met punishment to accused people. So hence police bond, bail, and then prosecution immediately must commence. Those are reforms we are putting in place because you've done your investigations before arresting somebody. Now, you also know once a matter goes to court, if it's not under the Financial and Economic and Financial Crimes Court, we still have 20 years for processes. So I've touched on that. I don't want to belabor the point. The Access to Information Act has been talked about already. Media, very important. We have formalized the self-regulation for the media. This is very important. because I think the media had issues that there was a hoovering attempt to regulate them, and therefore they may not whistleblow because that hoovering potential for regulation could be abused so that they don't whistleblow. I think the media now is free because we agreed with media owners that you self-regulate, so you can be whistleblowers. And please be whistleblowers, except you must do it when you have done your verification. Don't use a social media story, because you also don't want to damage innocent people. I think it's important to say that. Yeah, I think I've said what I wanted to say there. Enforcement. I just want to share a very important development here, and Ambassador Sweden touched on it. This government took a decision that will run in tandem prosecutions and non-conviction-based approaches to the fight against corruption, such as, for what reason? To be able to recover assets much quicker than a lengthy process where a party comes forward. Completely illegal. An area there were debates that, no. They are pushing non-conviction-based asset recovery. In America, a lot of cases are cleared through NCBs. A lot. In the first world. I follow myself these things. Even in the middle of the court process in America, people decide to settle amicably. So here, we did some work to check what Angola was doing, and we learned that in the first 3 years of the current government, 3 years, they couldn't convict anybody, they couldn't recover anything. So they applied this methodology as part of their legal processes. So we are combining these two, prosecution and non-conviction-based resolution of cases. And that's why you are seeing more recoveries now. But this is not to say that prosecutions will not be there. Prosecutions are there. But it's important to do that. For me, we must restore stolen assets to the owners. Let's bring back the money and be able to support free education. Very important for Lady Piri, right? That's a clever thing where I stand. We have, for the first time, experienced in this country where from one suspect we recover $30 million. In this country, that's a lot of money, which the litigation would have taken longer. And probably because they took so much money, they would have paid lawyers $5 million, and they may have won the case. I'm here to argue this point at this conference, that it's purely illegal to do that, but we combine the measures. I also know the fact that if people just have assets recovered, they may continue doing these negative things. So, but it's all legal. And I think this combination is important. Timely disposal of cases is very important. So we will continue to combine these measures. I also want to indicate that technology is important. We are lagging behind technology. We need to accelerate e-government, e-business, e-economy in order to take out the bureaucratic processes that seem to favor fidgeting, procurement, service delivery to our citizens. So we are on the road as a government to improve replacement, improve replacement of manual processes, activities with digital processes, which reduces, not completely wipes out, reduces the chances for the thing we don't like: corruption, abuse of public resources, assets. So, and I think for our partners, we would like to learn from you how you've done it in your jurisdictions. The Chandra Foundation, we want to work together quicker how we've done these things so that we can take out the opportunity that presents itself when we have too many manual processes, delays, licenses, simple license. The business is told to go once, twice, 4, 5 times. In the process, they get fed up and say, here's a something, right? Here's a something. I want my license. So I think that is not acceptable. I also want to say to you, part of our government's agenda, colleagues, is to improve public funds management, usage, accountability, but reporting on the public funds as we manage them. You will see the Minister of Finance now does what you now think is a normal releases, normal information to say this quarter we've dispersed so much for various public uses. Pay attention to those things. It wasn't there before. The idea is to make citizens see that their money is being dispersed in accordance to a law, a piece of legislation called the budget. We always take for granted, we think that the budget is just a budget. The budget is a law. The Budget Act means every year we will have a law which contains revenue and expenditure, public revenues and expenditure. And we must report to the citizens. And that's happening now routinely. Before it was not there. So you also have an opportunity to say, what's going on in that area? I think it's important, in my view. So, maybe that is why our ratings have improved. In the last 4 years, our ratings have improved. You know better, Transparency International, Zambia, madam. And when your ratings come out, our political competitors say, no, this is manipulation. I believe those ratings are based on standard processes, isn't it? I don't have to say more on that. So thank you. Citizens need to pay note of the improvement in our ratings with regard to corruption in this country, which has not happened over many years. I think the CPI improvement from 33 in 2021 to 39 in 2024 must be taken note of. Is these measures that we've been putting in place. We can do more. I'm the first one to confess. Our ranking rising from 117 to 92 out of 180 countries is still unacceptable where I sit. But I'm only reflecting that this is progress. But we can do more. I want to argue one important thing here. That's what I said, the causal relationship, multiple directional causal relationship. This government will continue driving economic and social development as a tool, part of the tools to fight corruption. When society is deprived because the economy is declining, as it was, you saw actually something, a correlation. The economy was going down, corruption was going up, the debt was going up. There's a connection there. The debt mountain was going up. From my past, if the liability is growing, where is the asset? The liability was growing, the debt was growing. To balance your books in the balance sheet, there must be compensating assets. But no, there was nothing like that. So it is important to focus, we believe, in accelerated economic development. To deal with the debt mountain, to reorganize the mining sector, to address tourism, to address various sectors. It's a tool partially for fighting corruption. That's where we see it ourselves. In a country where citizens are deprived, the economy is not growing, jobs are not available, it worsens the situation. So I want to argue today that economic growth is integral to the fight against corruption. Accelerated economic growth creates opportunities for many, provides resources with the prudence measures to support Lady Piri free education. Right? So she doesn't get to carry a baby, another baby, when she's a baby herself. It gives Lady Piri an opportunity to have more years in school and better chances of her getting a job or a business instead of rushing to carry another baby. Because that's what's happening in our country and African countries and elsewhere, third world countries. Babies carrying babies in their tummies when they're not able to look after the baby. They themselves are being looked after. So we keep the kids longer in school. That's the issue. But you can only do that when you can afford them the opportunity to be in school, in free education, to prepare them, to give them skills and better opportunities. So we see that as integral to ourselves, to the fight against corruption by creating opportunities for such people. Education curricula is very important as well, and we are working on that. I know some will not see the connection. We see a connection. Decentralization, taking money, colleagues, from the center in Lusaka. If you look at the big ticket thefts that were taking place, they were all from Lusaka, because that's where the pocket, the treasury was. But our attempt is to move as much money away from Lusaka as possible to the constituencies. And you have a higher chance of building a new classroom. You have a higher chance of buying desks there. You have a higher chance of water and sanitation there than keeping the money in Lusaka, where people have perfected the art of siphoning leave and they sit in decision-making boardrooms. So that, to us, is important. So CDF tool is part of our fight, yes, for economic growth, equitous distribution of resources, but also as a tool to make centralized corruption dried out or out of resources to some extent. I know you will argue that they still have too much at the center. Yeah, it's a process. We're getting there. I agree with the comments made on elections, free, fair, transparent elections, inclusive elections. Don't we in the UPND know this better than many? We do. We do. But elections must not be a platform for invoking in violence. That's what I say to colleagues. No matter how we feel, elections must not lead to violence, to conflict, because conflict will wipe out any gains we've made in economic growth and the fight against corruption. We must continue, seeking that which is better, but must not lead to conflict, to violence. We know too many countries that are in a difficult situation, and we're all involved in helping to bring peace to those countries. We're happy that there will be a peace accord signed for Eastern DRC, Rwanda, the US, Qatar. We want to thank all of those that are involved in that effort. Conflict? No. Democracy is important as a vehicle for distributing resources, pushing development, but also we must deal with issues around social media, communication, social media. It's becoming a menace right now. Some of us read stories about us. We're even surprised ourselves, we who are being written about. Really? Is that possible? Really? With AI now, anything can be created. Anything. And it looks quite real. I think this is not a Zambia problem. This is a global problem. We must cooperate on how to fight misinformation. In our electoral system, colleagues, results are counted at the polling station. Every polling station. There's a certificate. And now we have made before there was a polling station and streams. Now every stream, this is it is here, is a polling station by operational definition. Am I right? There's a result certificate. But if someone says, my election was stolen because at a totaling center, new figures were added, we need to follow through first, because the origination of all figures towards winning or losing an election is at the polling station. I think some countries are still moving ballot papers to a central place. I hear so. But we count at every polling station. We need to make sure that we count properly at the polling station and get the true results, so that then the aggregation should not create problems unless there is fraud that is organized. And we must all work together to avoid organized fraud. And personally, I know what organized fraud is. I know it very well. And so we're trying to help to keep that out. But sometimes we need to simply show each other the right way. But we are in full support of that. This conference should help us to identify, at least indicate how we could progress to identify flaws, help, challenges, so corruption doesn't take excessive root. I must tell you that a lot of presidents are scared to tackle the fight against corruption. I must tell you, a lot of presidents or heads of state and government are not willing to walk this fight against corruption in full. It is full of perils from many angles. This president is not one who is scared of doing that. Zero. But we need, the president can't work as an individual. He needs to work with all of us. Again, collaboration, which is part of the theme. I like that issue. So I think the reforms are important. We agree. You've already touched on that. And if I make an ask, all political parties here, I hear there's an opportunity for us to sign the Electoral Integrity Charter, which this conference is facilitating to develop, I hear. If that's true, I encourage our own party, UPND, our alliance partners, and other political parties to sign up to that. That's my encouragement. Let's sign up to that. It will bring about peer pressure amongst political parties. And I think Anti-Corruption Commission, TIZ, I think we must encourage those parties that are not here to see the value of, at least it's one step towards having a common understanding, common position with political parties, amongst political parties. And more things should happen inside there. Because once we've signed up, it means now we are committed to the improvements that may be required, that come with it. That's my encouragement. And that means civil society as well, other leaders, traditional faith groups, really, in their own right, must ascribe to what I may call minimum standards. It's not just in the elections. It's in the way we receive complaints from our own colleagues who come to tell us stories, weird stories about things that are happening. Sometimes they don't even exist. But we accommodate those stories. We even help them to organize press conferences to say things that don't exist. More importantly, not to encourage citizens to go the violent way. We resisted it when the opportunity was there. Many opportunities. And I stand tall here to say, as president of UPND in opposition, including my predecessor. We felt shortchanged in 2001. We didn't go in the streets. We felt shortchanged in 2015. We didn't go in the streets. We felt shortchanged in 2016. We didn't go in the streets. Our petition was not heard in 2016 in accordance with the Bill of Rights, the right to be heard. We didn't go in the streets. I think that we've established a character as a political party, that violence is not part of what we support. We will seek civilized ways of resolving problems, such as dialogue. And they've heard me calling for dialogue. We'll use the last recourse, judiciary, to seek resolution of that which we don't agree with. Street fights, because we have a right to do certain things which could degenerate when we do those things, is not wise. We've seen too many countries around us losing themselves. We shouldn't do that. I send the message, and I choose to do that because you invited me to speak. You didn't tell me what not to touch. So I decided that this is what I would talk about. So you can forgive me for that. Next time you invite me, give me a script so I can stay in that script. I will respect that. Let me say, with these words, multiple of them, you could choose what you think is important and run with that. With these words, we now declare the 2025 Zambia Anti-Corruption Conference officially opened. And we wish you successful deliberations and look forward to the outcomes that we can define as actionable outcomes, which we can track going forward, so that the next year we meet, we will say we raised these issues, we've made progress on 1, 2, 3, we're still working on the others. I think it's a good habit to get into that situation. God bless you all. God bless our great country, Zambia. God bless our global village. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the keynote speech delivered by the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. Ladies and gentlemen, just before we come to the close of the program, we will be going into a brief photo session, so I will ask our high-level table to please come forward. If you can just stand at the front of the stage with the guidance of security as well. Our official media, if you could please come forward. And this is the opportunity to stand for an official photograph for the opening ceremony of today's event. All right, thank you very much to our official photographers for this afternoon. And I'll invite our high-level table to please take your seats once again. is at this time, ladies and gentlemen, that I will please call upon Dr. Chaplain Oliver Mutantaboa, once again, Deputy Chaplain General, to give us the closing prayer.
Shall we pray? Our gracious Heavenly Father, we once again come before your throne, thanking you, mighty God, for what is happening here. Father, we pray for the stakeholders whose aspirations mean well for this nation. We thank you, Father, even for our beloved President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, for his desire to ensure that what is taking place in here, oh God, prospers. Mighty God, as we come to this point, Father, we pray that may the Spirit of God go before us. Father, you declared in your word that where you see the Spirit of God descending and remaining, there God is. Therefore, Father, we pray that your will be done. As we disperse, Father, it is our prayer that you go before each one of us. We pray, Lord, for traveling mercy.